What's happening, everybody? My name is Christian, and this is part 6 of the Tennessee Nightingale solo tutorial. If you missed part 5, please click that link right there, and then we'll take you to it so you can get all caught up with where we're at right now. This video is going to be fairly short because the part is not really that complicated or that involved. It's a technical part, as you just heard, but it's really just a pattern that kind of repeats a couple times. So this video shouldn't really be that long. So we'll just talk about that part and then call it. But first, let's talk about what the chord progression is at this point. So we just finished with that long note section which ended with that blues lick, and then we had that lick, which then took us to this whole section. So the chord that's happening right when it hits is this A flat major 7, and I'm pretty sure I'm voicing it like that. So just 1, 5, 3, 7 of A flat. So A flat, E flat, C, G. And that's during the first passage. That happens, and then it goes to an F dominant with the same sort of actual voicing. So 1, 5, 3, 7, flat 7. So F, C, A, E flat. And then it goes back to A flat. Then it goes back to the F. Then it goes to C sharp major 7. 1, 5, 7, 3. And then C minor 7. 1, 5, 7, 3. Same sort of voicings. So that whole thing: A flat major 7. F dominant, A flat major 7, F dominant, C sharp major 7, and then C minor 7. That's that whole section, really. So the concept, or the reason why I chose those chords and the concept behind this whole lick and this whole part is the riff is an open string riff, meaning that there's constantly an open string ringing out. I'm constantly pulling off to an open string. And these are very common licks. I mean, the easiest one, if you think like Thunderstruck by AC/DC, that's a very obvious open string riff. And a lot of bands have them. They're really cool sounding, especially when you kind of organize them in a neat way. That's sort of what this is. So all I had to do is I just had to make sure that the open string that I'm using in this case the entire time is just the open G string. So that's a G note. So I just had to make sure that any chord I was playing at that time had a G in it, or at least had a G that functioned normally, in a normal way over the chord. So if you look at all these chords, A flat major 7, the G is actually in this chord, it's the 7. So I know it's going to work over that. And then the F dominant, there is no G in this chord, but G is the 9 of F dominant. So if you kind of play without the high E, you kind of get that sort of chord out of it, this sort of thing. So I knew the G was going to function in that chord just fine. And then of course it goes back to A flat, so same thing, and then back to F, same thing. And then the C sharp major 7, the G is that kind of sharp 4, which I think I talked about in the previous video. That note. So if I sing it, dum, da, it's a really cool note. And then over so yeah, that's the sharp 4. And then over the C minor 7, it's just the 5, right? It's pretty normal. It's right smack in the middle of the chord. So if you are ever wanting to kind of screw around with some of these open string riffs or whatever, I would experiment with changing the chords, but just make sure that the open string that you're using, whether it's the G string, the B string, E string, whatever, just make sure that that note works in the chord. And then all you need to do is just change all the other notes around it. And that's sort of what I'm doing here. So that's really the chord progression. And now let's talk about what each little riff is, so you can see how they all fit over their respective chords. Alright, so this first riff that happens is over the A flat major 7 chord, and it pretty much looks like this. So let me just play it kind of slow. Here we go. Okay. So that's what it sounds like sped up. So let's just talk about everything that's going on here, and then I'll kind of describe how I put it together. So we start with this little E flat up to the C on the G string, pull off, then E flat major arpeggio, back to the C, and back to the pull off. That's part one. So if I do it again slow. Okay. Next part two. And all that is E flat, pull off to G, B flat, D, pull off to G, B flat, C, pull off to G. So that part can be a little tricky because it's very pinky intensive, which can be kind of hard for me to play. But that's really it. So let me play it all kind of slow. So excuse me. So that's that part. Once you get it going, it kind of feels comfortable, but it's kind of awkward to kind of build it up to the tempo. So just practice it slow and kind of work it up. The idea behind this riff, it's an open string riff, the kind of what I mentioned earlier, where there's an open string pretty much being featured all the time, and that's the open G string. So I'm kind of constantly going back to that open string. But another thing that's going on here that helped me kind of put it together, gave me a direction whenever I was trying to put this together, was having some sort of little melody happening inside of the pattern. So the melody in this case is this. It's really the top note. So listen to the top note whenever I play it. Anything on the G string. So to me I hear, excuse my pitch, it's not great. But that's sort of what I'm hearing. Let me pick it. So right, that's kind of what I'm hearing when I play it. So let me play it and I'll kind of try to sing it, see if that works. So that's what I'm hearing, and that's kind of why I fashioned the lick like this, because I wanted that little melody happening. So it's a little tip for you. If you want to have a part like this that's very heavy on the notes, a lot of notes, and it kind of has this jumpy feel, have some sort of hidden little melody that kind of ties it all together. It allows the listener to kind of latch on to something, and so it doesn't just sound like random notes happening all over the place. It's something that they can kind of grasp onto, and it makes the lick kind of work. So experiment with that. It's kind of a cool idea. Just have a little hidden melody in there that makes it all work. So, and that happens throughout all of the other parts too. The melody sort of evolves as the chords change. So that's what's going on right there. Technically, let's talk about what I'm doing real fast. I hope I get this right, because I almost feel like it's different every time, but I think I know what I'm doing here. Let me scoot this way. Right, for the right hand, I am doing, let's see, so pick, finger, pull off, pick again on the low string, finger, hammer on, pick, pull off, pick, pull off, pick, finger, pull off, pick, finger. So I'm just going to play that slow. It's really awkward for me to say all of that. So I'm going to play it slow, and you just kind of check out what's going on. It's pretty, like I said earlier, it's kind of a weird pattern to get, but once you start flowing with it, it kind of becomes sort of comfortable. So that's what the pattern is, and it's pretty much the same for every single other riff, because it's the same exact pattern. So keep that all in mind, and let's just continue on to the other chords. Okay, so the second lick is being played over the F dominant 7th, and it looks something like this. Okay, it's largely very F sounding, very F pentatonic sounding, and I'll just kind of run through all the notes. So the first part is this: F, C, pull off, F, G, A, C, pull off. So if I play that slow. Okay, so at tempo. Okay. Part 2 looks like this. So if I play that slow. And that's just F, pull off, C, E flat, pull off, B flat, D, and then pull off. So the different thing about this part 2 versus the first licks part 2, that part, is that the low note of this section wasn't moving. It was just B flat both times. B flat, B flat. But this one it does move, where it's F, C, B flat, right there. C, B flat. So it's a little thing, just keep that in mind. So if I try to play that up to tempo, that's pretty much it. Then it goes back to part 1, or the first lick, and that's over the A major 7. And then it does that second one again over the F dominant. Then the next chord is this C sharp major 7, and then the lick is a little bit different. The first part looks identical to the thing we just went through, it's just up 3 frets. So now it's, right? Keep in mind that open G string sounds a little weird in the context of that one, in that lick. But over the chord, it sounds perfectly fine. So anyway, it's the exact same thing. So it looks like, in this case, the notes look like A flat, E flat, pull off, A flat, B flat, C, E flat, pull off. Same exact thing as this, just up 3 frets. Part 2 of that looks like that. And we're back to just one note on the bottom here. So that's G, pull off, C, F, pull off, C again, E flat, pull off. So play that one slow. Okay. Next lick is the exact same beginning, just up 2 frets. So now we're starting on B flat. So the notes are B flat, F, pull off, B flat, C, D, F, pull off. Same exact thing as what we're doing back here. Or excuse me, back there, but just up 2 frets. Part 2 of this looks like this. So that's G, pull off, D, F, pull off, C, E flat. So I'll just play part 2 slow. That's tempo. Now that one repeats one, it only really plays the whole thing once. The second time it just does this. Really just does part 1 of the lick. Just that, and then ends with just kind of an E sort of pentatonic run, E flat pentatonic running downwards. So that little thing is just this. E flat, F, E flat, C, B flat, G, E flat. And that begins that next lick, which we'll do in the next video. So let me just recap all of that, try to play everything slow. Hopefully I don't screw up. Here we go. That's everything. Sometimes I miss some of the pull-offs with my pinky. It's kind of a little hard sometimes, but that's really it. Once you get the initial pattern down, with the right hand in particular, the whole thing is really not that complicated. So that's it. Keep in mind the top little melodies, like I mentioned earlier, like those change for every chord. So that's something you kind of latch on to. Maybe think about that while you're playing it, just kind of keep everything together, keep it all glued together. So that's pretty much it. I hope all of this makes sense. Please leave a comment if you have any questions about this part or any other part of the tune. and stay tuned for the next part, the final part of this entire solo, part 7. Take care.